There's a pattern in history that has destroyed 3 global superpowers in the last 500 years. And right now in 2025, the United States is following that exact same pattern, stage by stage, decision by decision, almost as if we're reading from the same script that ended in catastrophe every time before. The pattern begins in 1590. Spain was the richest empire on earth. They controlled half the world's gold and silver. Their military dominated Europe. Their currency was accepted everywhere. Within 80 years, they were bankrupt, reduced to a second-rate power that never recovered. In 1914, Britain ruled the largest empire in human history. The sun never set on British territory. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. Within 40 years, the empire was gone. The currency collapsed. Britain became America's junior partner. In 1991, the Soviet Union was the other superpower. Nuclear arsenal, global influence, satellites in space. And yet, it ceased to exist in 900 days, not from war, but from economic implosion. 3 superpowers, 3 collapses, all following the same sequence. And here is what should concern you. The United States has already completed 5 of the 7 stages. We're not approaching the pattern, we're deep inside it. This is the story of how empires die, why they always think they're different, and why the math says we're next. What collapse really looks like. Imperial collapse doesn't begin with invasion. It doesn't begin with military defeat. It begins with economic exhaustion. Superpowers overextend themselves. Military bases in 100 countries, wars on multiple fronts, promises they cannot keep, debts they cannot repay. At first, the decline is invisible. The currency still works. The military still wins battles. The government still speaks with confidence. But beneath the surface, the foundation is cracking. Productive capacity weakens. Resources are misallocated. The most talented citizens leave. Then the acceleration begins. Allies hedge, rivals test boundaries, trade partners seek alternatives. The reserve currency slowly loses its dominance. Advantages become vulnerabilities. The currency begins to flow back home. The military becomes unaffordable. The promises become empty. This isn't theory. This is what happened to Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union. And they all made the same fatal mistake. They assumed their power was permanent. They overextended. They debased their currency. They ignored reality until collapse was already underway. Now let's break down how the pattern unfolded, step by step. Spain, 1500-1600s. The first global empire. Spain was the original blueprint. After Columbus reached the Americas in 1492, Spain became the first true world power. They conquered the Aztec and Inca empires, seizing the richest gold and silver mines ever discovered. By 1550, they were importing 200 tons of silver a year. By 1600, over 400 tons. Spain controlled the global money supply. Spanish silver, the real de ocho, became the world's reserve currency. And that's where the pattern begins. A nation controls the world's money and assumes that makes them invincible. Stage 1. Military overextension. King Philip II, ruling from 1556 to 1598, was the wealthiest monarch in history. And he spent like it. Spain fought everywhere. The Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean. France in Italy. Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, England on the seas, wars in the Philippines, wars in the Americas. By 1580, Spain had military commitments on 4 continents. Half of its revenue went to war, and it still wasn't enough. Stage 2. Currency debasement. Tax revenue couldn't cover the costs. So Spain did what every collapsing empire does. They debased the currency. Silver coins were secretly mixed with copper. A coin that was supposed to be 100% silver became 50%, then 25%, then barely any silver at all. Merchants stopped accepting them at face value. Prices skyrocketed. People lost trust in the currency. Stage 3. Debt spiral. Spain borrowed heavily from Italian and German bankers. By 1557, only 20 years into Philip's reign, Spain declared bankruptcy. They defaulted again in 1560. Again in 1575. Again in 1596. 4 bankruptcies in 40 years. Each time, they promised reforms. Each time, they kept borrowing. Stage 4. Collapse of productive capacity. Spain had all the gold and silver in the world, and it destroyed them. When you have unlimited money, you stop producing. Why grow food when you can import it? Why innovate when you can buy? Why build when you can pay others to build? Spanish elites viewed work as beneath them. Manufacturing collapsed. Agriculture stagnated. Everything was imported. Spain became a pipeline. Wealth came in and flowed right back out. Once the silver mines depleted, the empire's economy imploded. Stage 5. Social decay. Crime exploded. The cities filled with beggars. Productive citizens emigrated. Creative talent moved to England, France, and the Netherlands. Spain was left with soldiers, priests, and bureaucrats, and no one creating real wealth. By 1700, the Spanish Empire was a hollow shell. A global superpower reduced to a tourist destination. The fall of Britain, the USSR, and the American paralleled the British Empire. 1900s. The empire where the sun never set. By the early 1900s, Britain ruled 1/4 of the planet. Over 400 million people lived under the Union Jack. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. London was the economic capital of the world. Just like Spain, Britain believed its dominance was permanent. But the pattern had already begun. Stage 1. Military overextension. Britain had military commitments across 6 continents: India, Africa, the Middle East, China, the Pacific, the Caribbean. They had to defend trade routes, colonies, and strategic choke points worldwide. When World War I broke out in 1914, Britain faced a brutal choice: stay neutral and preserve the empire, or join the war and risk everything. They chose to fight. World War I cost Britain over $40 billion, equivalent to $1 trillion today. Britain borrowed relentlessly, especially from the United States. By 1918, the global creditor had become the global debtor. They won the war, but lost their financial foundation. Stage 2. Currency debasement. The pound was supposed to be backed by gold, but the war drained Britain's gold reserves to half their pre-war level. Still, in 1925, they tried to return to the gold standard at the old exchange rate. It was economic suicide. The pound became wildly overvalued. British exports collapsed. Factories closed. Unemployment soared. To defend the pound, interest rates had to stay painfully high, which strangled the domestic economy. By 1931, reality could no longer be denied. Britain abandoned the gold standard. The pound fell 25% overnight. For the first time in 200 years, the global reserve currency admitted it could no longer keep its promises. Stage 3. Debt spiral. Britain still hadn't recovered from World War I, and World War II arrived. Another $120 billion in costs. More borrowing from the US and Canada. By 1945, Britain owed more than its entire GDP. The empire was financially dead. It just hadn't been buried yet. Stage 4. Loss of empire. In 1947, Britain gave up India, the jewel of the empire. Over the next 20 years, everything else unraveled. Africa, the Middle East, the Caribbean, Southeast Asia. By 1970, the British Empire existed only in museums and memory. Stage 5. Currency collapse. The pound's decline tells the entire story. 1940. 1 pound equals $4.031950. The world's reserve currency became a regional currency. Britain kept the symbols: the UN Security Council seat, nuclear weapons, a special relationship with the US. But the truth was clear. The empire was gone, and it was never coming back. The Soviet Union, 1945 to 1991. The superpower that imploded. After World War II, the USSR emerged as America's rival. They had nuclear weapons, the world's largest army, a vast empire in Eastern Europe, and global influence. They believed communism would bury capitalism, but beneath the military and propaganda machine, the economy was rotting. Stage 1. Military overextension. The Soviets spent 15 to 20% of their GDP on the military, triple America's share. They tried to match the US at every turn. Tanks, missiles, satellites, influence in Cuba, Vietnam, Syria, Angola, Ethiopia. But their economy was only a fraction of the size. They were burning money they didn't have. Stage 2. Economic stagnation. By the 1970s, the Soviet economy stopped growing. Factories produced junk. Farms failed. Technology lagged behind by decades. Despite their vast farmland, they imported grain from the West. Central planning killed innovation. No incentives meant no progress. Oil revenue kept them afloat until oil prices collapsed in the 1980s. Then the real crisis began. Stage 3. Currency collapse. The ruble wasn't a true currency. The world didn't want it. Even Soviet citizens preferred US dollars. The government paid for foreign goods, using gold and oil, because no one trusted their money. By 1985, gold reserves were draining. Oil revenue was down. The USSR was running out of real money. Stage 4. Loss of empire. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Eastern Europe broke away Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania, East Germany. The buffer zone that secured Soviet power evaporated in a year. The USSR couldn't respond. They were broke. Stage 5. Complete collapse. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. A superpower with 30,000 nuclear weapons vanished not from invasion, but from economic implosion. In 900 days, they went from empire to extinction. The United States, following the same pattern here, as the part most people don't want to hear, the United States has already completed 5 of the 7 stages. Let's walk through them. Stage 1. Military overextension. Check 750-plus military bases troops in 150-plus countries, defending Europe, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines, Middle East commitments countering Russia and China. Annual military spending, $850 billion, more than the next 10 countries combined. And recruitment is falling. Equipment is aging. Manpower is stretched thin. Exactly like Spain. Exactly like Britain. Exactly like the USSR. Stage 2. Currency debasement, check, in 1971. Nixon ended the gold standard. Since then, the dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power. Money supply increased 400%. Since 2000, over $6 trillion printed since 2020. We're not mixing copper into coins. We're printing unlimited paper and digital dollars. The mechanism is modern. The effect is ancient. Stage 3. Debt spiral. Check U.S. national debt. $36 trillion interest payments, approaching $1 trillion per year. We now borrow money just to pay interest in previous borrowing. Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity. Check. America doesn't make things anymore. We consume what other countries produce. Massive trade deficits, supply chains in China, medicine, electronics, steel imported, even military components imported, just like Spain imported everything after its silver boom. Stage 5. Social decay. Check. Every collapsing empire shows the same symptoms. Institutional distrust, time rising, homelessness exploding, drug overdoses, 100,000 deaths per year, political polarization, collapsing birth rates, rain drain. Spain had it. Britain had it. The USSR had it. America has it now. The pattern is undeniable. Stage 6. Loss of reserve currency status. We're already seeing the cracks. BRICS developing alternatives, China and Russia trading in yuan, and ruble. Central banks buying gold at record levels. Saudi Arabia accepting yuan for oil. Countries reducing dollar reserves. The early signs are here. Stage 7. Collapse, not gradual. Sudden. When the reserve currency fails, everything spirals fast. Currency crisis, debt crisis, political crisis, military paralysis. The superpower becomes a cautionary tale. The global currency becomes regional. The empire becomes memory. This is the pattern. And the United States is deep inside it. Why this matters? We keep repeating the same comforting lies. We're America. We're different. We have technology. We have the dollar. Spain said the same. Britain said the same. The Soviet Union said the same. Every empire thinks the pattern won't apply to them until it does. The math doesn't lie. You cannot spend beyond your means forever. Maintain an empire without industry. Debasement your currency without consequence. Avoid collapse once the first 5 stages are complete. We may have 10 years, maybe 5, maybe less. But every sign says the pattern is accelerating. Since 2020, we've sprinted through stages that used to take decades. Is collapse guaranteed? Maybe America reforms. Maybe we rebuild. Maybe we adapt in ways Spain, Britain, and the USSR couldn't. But the pattern, the math and history say otherwise. Conclusion: if this opened your eyes to where we actually are in the sequence, subscribe, because when we hit stages 6 and 7, you'll want to understand what happened and why. The answers aren't hidden in the future. They're written in the past. And I'll show you where to look.